uses chemical weapons against civilians in the town of Ghouta.
Men, women, children lying in rows, killed by poison gas. It is in the national security interests of the United States to respond to the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons through a targeted military strike.
Russia proposed on Monday that Syria surrender control over its chemical weapons to the international community for its eventual dismantling to avoid a U.S. military strike.
The U.S. ends up backing down, but the whole thing establishes Syria as a great powers dispute, with America against Assad and Russia backing him. Just weeks later, the first American training in arms through that CIA program finally reached Syrian rebels. The US is now a participant in the Syrian war. In February of 2014, something happens that transforms the war. An Al-Qaeda affiliate, mostly based in Iraq, breaks away from the group over internal disagreements over Syria. The new group calls itself the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and it becomes Al-Qaeda's enemy. ISIS doesn't fight Assad. Instead, it fights the other rebels and it fights the Kurds, carving out a mini-state in Syria that it calls its caliphate. And that summer, it marches across Iraq, seizing territory and galvanizing the world against it. Then, in September, almost exactly 1 year after it almost bombed Assad in Syria,
We're moving ahead with our campaign of airstrikes against these terrorists, and we're prepared to take action against ISIL in Syria as well.
that summer, the Pentagon launches its own program to train Syrian rebels. But unlike the CIA program, this one will only train rebels who fight just ISIS, not Assad. And the program fizzles out, showing that America now opposes ISIS more than Assad, but also that there's really no like-minded force on the ground in Syria. In August, Turkey begins bombing Kurdish groups in Iraq and in Turkey, even as Kurds are fighting ISIS in Syria. Turkey also doesn't bomb ISIS in Syria. All of this deepens tension with the US over this question of whether they need to treat Assad or ISIS the primary enemy, and creates a lot of confusion among the Kurds about where the US stands. Now, Assad has been losing ground all this time, to ISIS, to the rebels, and in September of 2015, Russia intervenes in his behalf. Russia says it's there to bomb ISIS, but in fact it just bombs the anti-Assad rebels, including some rebels who are backed by the US. So as it stands now, there are lots of different groups and outside countries involved in Syria's war, and even among allies there are big disagreements about who their enemies are, who to support, and how to do it. And those contradictions are a big part of why, for this war, there is just no end in sight.